and welcome to this first look exploring session looking at the End Town plays, and we are continuing our journey through what is known as Passion Play number 1, otherwise the primary units of play 28 and 29. All of these breakdowns are sort of semi-artificial, but we are midway through an ongoing Passion Play today, and we're going to skip into another Passion Play that was performed at a different time. So we'll be skipping between two different texts, even though we're still effectively following the same story. The story so far, quite a lot of Bibles happened. We've got up to the bit in the Bible where the Last Supper has happened. Please reread everything that went in before there. That'll give you an idea where we are. We are about to go to the Garden of Gethsemane, and yes, that's basically where we've got to. We've had some demons giving us a bit of a synopsis. We've had some donkey riding, and we've had some Last Suppering and some conspiracying. Usual warnings for these kind of text is that there's a high probability of anti-Jewish sentiment because of the nature of what these texts are arguing for, and other possible triggers may be available, but we will assess the text as we go. Assessing the text today for its performability. Reading Herod and Judeus number 1 is
Aliki, Chapple, actor and theatrical translator based in Lancaster, England.
Reading Judeus number 3 and Annas is
Briony, actor in Lincolnshire.
Reading Leyon, first soldier, and Judeus number 2 is...
Hello, my name's Francis Cox. I'm an actor living in Amsterdam.
I've just noticed that there's a interesting question there. Okay, never mind, I'll worry about it later. Reading Peter and Judeus 3 is...
Hi, I'm Eric, and as soon as you said Leon, I was thinking of the film. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah, quite different, quite different. Yes, I've just realised there's a clash of two people who've been given the same role. I'm assuming that role turns up separately later on, and that we'll figure out a split for that later. Reading Rewfyn and Second Soldier is...
Hi, I'm Alan Scott, neither an actor nor an academic, based in Suffolk.
Reading Jesus today is...
Hi, my name's Elizabeth Amisu. I'm an author based in Romford.
Reading Gamalyel and Caiaphas today is...
Hello, Dan, actor based in Montpellier, France.
Reading Magdalen, a messenger, and Ancilla 2 today is...
Hello, I'm Lynn. I'm a college composition teacher. I live in the northwestern United States.
Reading Contemplatio, Second Doctor, and an angel today is...
Hi, I'm Valentina. I'm an Italian actor and voiceover artist in London. I shall try to be angelic.
Reading Doctor number 3, Ancilla 1, and Pilate today is...
Rachael Nicole, actor in New Jersey.
And reading Maria and First Doctor today is...
Hello, Helen Good, historian, currently in London.
And I will resolve the ambiguity of who's reading Judeus number 3 in the chat in a moment. I'm your host, Robert Crichton. I will be reading just the stage directions, and hopefully nobody else. I might step in if a random disciple pops up that needs speaking, and I don't have time to hand it to somebody else. I'm hoping that won't happen, because that's just annoying. So without further ado, we're continuing the text. So it's important to remember that even though this is labelled as play 28, it isn't. It's the continuation of the previous play. It's part of a wider production. This division is entirely artificial. We've just had the Last Supper. It's been a lengthy ritualistic process of taking bread, wine, and feet washing from Jesus and to the disciples. And we have had Peter's denial that he's going to, it's the prophecy that Peter will deny Christ 3 times. And we now continue, effectively, Jesus' speech from last time. This is a certain possible amount of walking and talking going on here. The stage direction reads, "Here Jesus goes to Bethanywood, and his disciples following with sad countenance, Jesus saying..."
Now, my dear friends and brethren, each one, remember the words that I shall say. The time is come that I must gone, for to fulfill the prophecy that is said of me, that I shall die. The fiend's power for you to flee, which death I will not deny. Man's soul, my spouse, for to redeem, the oil of mercy is granted plain. By this journey that I shall take, by my Father I am sent, certain, betwixt God and man, an end to make. Man, for my brother, may I not forsake, nor show him unkindness, by no way. In pains for him, my body shall shake, and for love of man, man shall die.
And here Jesus and his disciples go toward the Mount of Olivet, and when he cometh a little there beside, in a place like to a park, he biddeth his disciples abide him there, and saith to Peter ere he goeth,
Peter, with thy fellows, here shalt thou abide, and which till I come again. I must make my prayer here you beside. My flesh quaketh sore for fear and pain.
Lord, thy request doth me constrain. In this place I shall abide still, nor remove till thou comest again, in confirming, Lord, of thy will.
Here Jesu goeth to Olivet, and setteth him down on his knees, and prayeth to his Father, thus saying,
O Father, Father, for my sake, this great passion thou take from me, which are ordained that I shall take, if man's soul saved may be, and if it behoove, Father, for me, to save man's soul that should spill, I am ready in each degree, the oil of these for to fulfill, the will of these for to fulfill.
Here Jesus goeth to his disciples, and findeth him sleeping, Jesus thus saying,
Peter, Peter, thou sleepest fast. Awake thy fellows, and sleep no more. Of my death ye are not aghast? Ye take your rest, and I pain sore.
Here Christ goeth again the second time to Olivet, and saith kneeling,
Father in heaven, I beseech thee, remove my pains by thy great grace, and let me through this death flee, as I did never know trespass. The water and blood out of my face distilleth for pains that I shall take. My flesh quaketh in fearful case, as thou the joints asunder should shake.
Here Jesus goeth again to his disciples, and findeth them asleep, Jesus thus saying, letting him letting. Oh, I'll figure that one out in a minute.
Father, the third time I come again, for leech mine eardon for to speed. Deliver me, Father, for this pain, which is reduced with full great dread. Unto thy Son, Father, take heed. Thou wottest I did never deed but good. It is not for me this pain I lead, but for man I sweet both water and blood.
Here an angel descendeth to Jesus, and bringeth to him a chalice with an host therein.
Hail, both God and man indeed. The Father hath sent thee this present. He bade that thou shouldest not dread, but fulfill his intent, as the parliament of heaven hath meant, that man's soul shall now redeemed be. From heaven to earth, Lord, thou wert sent, that did appendeth unto thee. This chalice is thy blood, this bread is thy body, for man's sin ever offended shall be. To the Father of heaven that is almighty, thy disciples and all priesthood shall offer for thee.
Here the angel ascendeth again suddenly.
Father, thy will fulfilled shall be. It is naught to say against the case. I shall fulfill the prophecy, and suffer death for man's trespass.
Here goeth Christ again to his disciples, and findeth them sleeping still.
Awake, Peter, thy rest is full long. Of sleep thou wilt make no delay. Judas is ready with people strong, and doth his part me to betray. Rise up, sirs, I you pray, unclose your eyne for my sake. We shall walk into the way and see him come that shall me take. Peter, when thou sayest I am forsake among mine friends and stand alone, all the cheer that thou canst make, give to thy brethren every one.
And here Jesus, with his disciples, goeth into the place, but there will briefly pause, just so that we're getting into it a bit and getting those who are new to the room a sense of what's going on here. This is a space that's quite open plan. There are specific stages that have been built around the place, and there's an awful lot of travelling that is built into the way the play is structured. So here we've got Jesus travelling from a place that is the garden, somewhere moving to the Mount of Olives, and there's a lot of travelling back and forth, and the potential of stage mechanics here. The angels descending from somewhere. How that is done, we do not know. And yeah, so there's a sense again, following on from last time, of the potential of a lot of, there's potential things happening without dialogue. That there's action that's maybe taking a reasonable amount of time, but which is not being filled. The disciples never reply; they never go sorry. That might be just simply absent. I don't know, but doesn't seem to be necessarily any evidence for that. Just seems to be how it's structured. Thoughts from the room, very briefly, before we go into now we've sort of got our heads in the game. Anyone want to do an opening salvo? I'm interested in the angel turning up with the bread and the chalice there, reiterating what we had earlier, just in heavenly form. Helen.
Yeah, that does seem to emphasize the centrality of the Eucharist for the people who wrote this, because it certainly isn't in the original story. The angels come, or the angel comes, but not the. In fact, this scene is the Transfiguration, isn't it?
No, I don't think it
No,
is.
it
I think
isn't.
that's
No.
it's earlier in the narrative.
Oh, right.
Is that not when Christ bleeds bleeds sweat in the garden? Is that different?
Yeah, it's the Transfiguration is more about the sort of passing on of divine powers and revealing his Godhead.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay.
It isn't Transfiguration, but
because here he's just he's asking for the cup to pass.
Yeah,
and he asks.
Getting the answer no.
Eventually, he keeps leaving messages, and eventually an angel replies. Lynn.
Yeah, this is just for me one of probably the most moving episode in the whole in the whole story of the Passion, where this divine being who must on some level know if he partakes of God, if he's part of this, the immortal Trinity, he must know that he's going to be resurrected, but still he's human enough to fear death. I just find this whole sequence quite moving.
Yes, it's perhaps the most human depiction element of the depiction of Jesus as well. Actually, he can be often a sermonizing mouthpiece, and it's very hard not to write him as a sermonizing mouthpiece. Actually, so. It's slightly different the way he talks here to other parts. Elizabeth.
Yes, Rob. Just speaking to what Lynn just said, I like this concept of being forsaken. We know the big thing about Christ is that he's forsaken by God on the cross, and he says, my God, why have you forsaken me? But he's being forsaken by his disciples in this scene. And that's quite powerful because they've been with him all the time. And now we're seeing this distance between him and them. He's not like them and they're not like him. And he is truly, we start to see Jesus Christ being truly alone here, in contrast to that Last Supper where they were together.
Yes, we have a series of betrayals as well being staggered here. You know, we've got the betrayal by Judas that's coming but has been prefigured, and they're constantly talking about, you know, the premonition that they will, on some level, abandon him, which we may or may not see in a moment. So yeah, it's very nicely layered in that way. We will move on in a moment after Eric says something.
I was just going to say that there are 3 like moments where he says, you know, wake up, wake up, wake up. And then obviously we know that there's going to be 3 denials as well.
Yes, doing things multiples of 3 always works well, doesn't it? He said. Including comedy, of course, the most important art form. Anyway, we will move on. So here, as we just left, here Jesus with his disciples goeth into the place, and there shall come in 10 persons well beseen in white arms and brigands, and some disguised in other garments, with swords, glaives, and other strange weapons, as cressets with fire, and lanterns and torches light. And Judas foremost of all, conveying him to Jesus by countenance, Jesus thus saying,
Sirs, in your way ye have great hast to seek him that will not flee. Of you I am right naught aghast. Tell me, sirs, whom seek ye?
Whom we seek here, I tell thee now, a traitor is worthy to suffer death. We know he is here among you. His name is Jesus of Nazareth.
Sirs, I am here that will not flee. Do to me all that ye can. Forsooth, I tell you, I am he, Jesus of Nazareth, that same man.
And here all the Jews fall suddenly to the earth when they hear Christ speak, and when biddeth them rise, they rise again, Christ thus saying.
Arise, sirs, whom seek ye? Fast have ye gone. Is house your coming hither for me? I stand before you here, each one, that ye may me both know and seek.
Jesus of Nazareth we seek, and we might him here espy.
I told you, now with words meek, before you all, that it was I.
And our last Briony, could you read Judas? I don't think I've given anyone to read Judas. I apologise. I think that's where it's. I think auto change has changed what some of the parts were. I think that's where the confusion went. So, Briony, could you read Judas, please?
Welcome, Jesus, my master dear. I have thee sought in many a place. I am full glad I find thee here, for I wist never where thou wast.
And here Judas kisseth Jesus, and anon all the Jews come about him and lay hands on him and pull him in as they were mad, woed, and maketh on him a great cry all at once. And after this Peter saith,
I draw my sword now, this cell. Shall I smite master? Fain would I weet.
And forthwith he smiteth off Malchus' ear, and he crieth, Malchus presumably, help mine ear, mine ear. And Christ blesseth it, and 'tis whole.
Put thy sword in the shade, fair and well, for he that smith with sword shall be smit. Judas, this treason counterfeited hast thou, and that thou shalt full sore repent. Thou hadst be better been unborn now, thy body and soul thou hast shent.
Lo, Jesus, thou mayst not the case refuse. Both treason and heresy is thee is found. Study now fast on thin excuse, whilst that thou goest in court is bound. Thou callest thee king of this world round. Now let me see this great power, and save thyself here whole and sound, and bring thee out of this danger.
Bring forth this traitor, spare him naught. On to Caiaphas, thy judge, we shall thee lead. In many a place we have thee sought, and to thy works take good heed.
Come on, Jesus, and follow me. I'm full glad that I thee have. Thou shalt be hanging on a tree. A million of gold shall not thee save.
Let me lay hand on him in hay. Unto his death I shall him bring. Show forth thy witchcraft and necromancy. What helpeth thee now, all thy false working?
Friends, take heed, ye done unright, so unkindly with cords to bind me here, and thus to fall on me by night, as though I were a thief's fear. Many times before you I did appear within the temple, seen me ye have, the laws of God to teach and lear, to him that will his soul save. Why did ye not me disbrave, and heard me preach, both loud and low? But now as woodmen ye gin to rave, and do things that ye not know.
Sirs, I charge you not a word more this night. Unto Caiaphas in haste look ye him lead. Have him forth with great despite, and to his wordest take ye none heed.
And here the Jews lead Christ out of the place with great cry and noise, some drawing Christ forward and some backward, and so leading forth with their weapons aloft and lights brenning. And in the meantime, Mary Magdalen shall run to Our Lady and tell her of our Lord's taking, thus saying,
O immaculate mother of all women, most meek, O devoutest in holy meditation ever abiding, the cause, lady, that I to your person seek is to wetten if you hearin any tiding of your sweet son and my reverend Lord Jesu, that was your daily solace, your ghostly consolation.
I would he should tell me, Magdalen, and he know, for to hear of him is all mine affection.
I would fain tell, lady, and I might for weeping, forsooth, lady, to the Jews he is sold. With cords they have him bound and have him in keeping. They have beaten him speciously and have him fast in hand.
Oh, how mine heart is cold. A heart hard as stone, how mayst thou lest when these sorrowful tidings are these told? So would to God, heart, thou mightest breast our Jesu, 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 why should he suffer this tribulation and adversity? How may they find in their hearts you to pursue that never trespassed in no manner degree? For never thing but that was good through ye. Wherefore then should he suffer this great pain? I suppose verily it is for the trespass of me. And I wish that mine heart should cleave in twain, for these languors may I sustain. The sword of sorrow hath so thirled my mind. Alas, what may I do? Alas, what may I say? These prongs mine heart asunder they do rend. O Father of heaven, where be all thy behests that thou hast promised me when a mother thou me made? Thy blessed Son I bear betwixt twin beasts, and now the bright colour of his face doth fade. O good Father, why wouldst thou that thine own dear Son shall suffer all this? And did he never against thy precept, but ever was obedient? And to every creature most pitiful, most gentle, and benign I wis. And now for all these kindnesses is now most shameful shent. Why wilt thou, gracious Father, that it should be so? Why man not else be saved, by none other kenned? Yet, Lord Father, than that shall comfort my woe when man is saved by my child and brought to so good end. Now, dear Son, sin thou hast ever be so full of mercy, that wilt not spare thyself for the love thou hast to man of all mankind, now have thou pity, and also think on thy mother, that heavy woman.
And we'll just pause there. There is a tiny unit of action left to go to close this play, this sequence. But there's quite a lot to discuss here, so I thought we'd take a moment to talk about it. We have, again, certain amounts of action which we don't have that much detail in terms of dialogue for. The same way that we had Jesus going away, coming back to his disciples, going away, coming back to his disciples. We have here someone gets his ear chopped off and gets it healed again with very, very little data actually as to how that functions. But then we get other places where we get a huge amount of data as Jesus is dragged off. We've got this, some people are pulling him one way, some people are pulling him another. It's a very dynamic image that is being painted for how that works, and actually how well armed the people coming for him are, and even a hint that maybe things are, they've timed this performance for when it's getting a bit dark, so that entering with torches has an actual effect as actually bringing in additional light. So I'm quite interested in this whole sequence there, for its brevity and its lack of brevity as well. The bits it makes long and the bits it doesn't give as much data on. Thoughts from the room? I can continue saying words. No, I say these words as a prompt to stand by, that other people will leap into action with their immediate impressions. Lynn?
Yes. Oh, I'm not going to be very articulate. So I was commenting earlier that it's a very moving part of the story that Jesus is afraid. Please take this cup from me, not as I will, but as you will. But he's afraid. And in this version of the story, his mother gets even more time to grieve and be afraid and try to reconcile herself with what's about to happen. So we're definitely trying to move the audience to make them feel that sorrow. And I think that's how this should function, because the joy that you feel at the resurrection is the more intense if you have gone through this period of mourning before. So this is doing some lovely emotional work here.
Other thoughts before technically we can close the loop on this Passion Play number 1? Helen?
Yeah, it's not a tremendously important thing at this point, but it's keeps on coming up in these mystery plays, and also I very much in the York plays too, I heard it, and that's the meaning of the word would, which doesn't really mean crazy or mad. It can just be distracted. It's a tremendously, it's a word that we don't use in this sense at all now, but it is an enormously important word.
And continues to be so into the later plays as well. And it's one of the problems with any of these words we use, or when we're trying to do glosses for any words, is that they have a range of meanings depending on the context in which you place them. So it depends on how intense the scene is to how distract the we want to use that term. Aliki, then Francis, and Eric.
I am interested in both the ear cutting business and the getting Jesus off somewhere else business as potential places where that tension breaks, because we've had this incredibly intense and moving scene followed by an incredibly intense and moving scene. So it's nice to think about how you can let the audience relax a tiny bit, and the mechanics of the in between, and the mechanics of that ear. How did they do it? I mean, we've been talking about a really large canvas here. How do you see a guy's ear getting cut off? Never mind getting healed. Anyway, I have no idea. It's just interesting.
Yeah, maybe that's why there's presumably an extemporized ongoing cry of mine ear, mine ear, mine ear, just to make sure it's really clear his ear's been chopped off, people. It's sort of interested in that moment, but it's really not interested in giving us any detail as to how that works. Francis.
Yeah, with regard to the word wood, when it came up in the text, I wondered if it had the same derivation as the Dutch word woedend, which means furious. Yeah, and it's still in common usage. It's not an antiquated word. And like Aliki, I was wondering how on earth they would have staged the chopping off of the ear and the sticking it back on again in.
Yeah, we do have a range for it. We've got having no sense, being insane, and being raging. So being enraged in that sense. So it's there is definitely a range for it. Lynn.
So, in answer to Francis's question, the first part of his comment, I was just listening to this YouTube thing the other day about the Norse gods, and evidently that word wood is related to Woden, the god who was kind of the mad Norse god. So yes, that the Dutch word that you were referring to is probably etymologically related to the early English woad.
Eric, sorry, I meant to go to you, but I forgot.
It's okay. People forget me all. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, I was just gonna.
You will sit in the dark.
Oh,
I have the dark. It's fine. I was just gonna comment on like how Maria, that Mary, the Mother of God in this, or Jesus in this case, it sort of goes. She doesn't actually. She weeps for her son, but she doesn't go, sort of, oh, my poor son, and so on. She doesn't sort of go talk about her loss. She talks about the public loss, and then she gets this one line that is, "And think on thy mother, that heavy woman," which is like, seems to be much more impactful than her sort of going, "Oh, my, whatever." I mean, she gets like, "I wish that mine heart should cleave in twain," and sort of like it feels very sort of, I don't know, human. Like her first response is shock and sorrow, and then she sort of moves through it. I don't know.
And we have got other plays that do this sort of exposition of grief, and we will probably see a further ness of that. We've got a little more text to get through from this play. We have two doctors, so we've gone from action, Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother, and now we're going to first and second doctors and they're sort of official, perhaps outside of the narrative kind of doctors to close the play. So let's hear what they have to say.
O thou altitude of all ghostly riches, O thou incomprehensible of great excellence, O thou luminary of pure lightness, shoot out thy beams until this audience.
O Filii Altissimi, clapped by eternally, heal this congregation with the salve of thy passion, and we pray thee, Spiritus Paraclete, with the fire of thy love to slake all attraction.
To the people not learned, I stand as a teacher of this procession to give information, and to them that be learned as a ghostly preacher, that in my rehearsal they may have delectation.
Welcome of the apostles, the glorious wear, first Peter, your prince, and Ake, your president, and Andrew, your half-brother, together in fear, that first followed Christ by one ascent.
O ye twain luminaries, James and John, continually brenning as bright as the sunbeam, with the chain of charity both knit in one, so offered of your mother to Christ in Jerusalem.
Welcome Philip, that converted Samarian, and converted the treasurer of the Queen Candace, with James the Lesser, that upheld Jerusalem, was made first patriarch by the ordinance of Cephas.
Hail Matthew, the apostle and also evangelist, that was clept to the flock of ghostly conversation from the darkness of conscience that ye were infest, with Bartholomew that fled all carnal temptation.
Hail, Simon Zealots, thus by your name, and Judas that both well loved our Lord. Therefore ye have both joy and game, where never is strife but good accord.
Hail Paul, great doctor of the faith, and vessel chosen by true election. Hail Thomas, of whom the gospel saith, in Christ's wound was your reflection.
Hail Joan Baptist, most sovereign creature that ever was born by natural conceiving, and highest of prophets, as witnesses Scripture. Hail, voice that in the desert was always crying.
And thus closes the Passion Play number 1, and also what's listed as Play 28. I like the way the First Doctor puts this. You know, I stand as a teacher for those who don't know anything, and for those who do know stuff, you'll sort of enjoy. You know, just going through some stuff you're very familiar with. You can sit there and be very smug. Alan.
Yeah, it's interesting. We've sort of come out of the play world here, haven't we?
Mm.
Because these are very definitely expositors of the Christian theology of the period of the production of the play, rather than within the time period or the context of the play itself.
Yes, they're rounding off the play with an epilogue, basically a shared epilogue. You know, the play had a prologue. It was by Satan. It seems reasonable to close it with these slightly more respectable figures. Lynn, then Eric.
Yeah, I am not well versed enough in the New Testament to place Matthew and Simon, but Paul is later. Paul is a generation or two after the crucifixion. So the First Doctor brings up Paul, so he's talking about the future relative to what we just saw.
Yeah, we have the and it's listed by people as a procession of saints. So that the suggestion here is that these are people walking by as to sort of close the event. So we get the various disciples, but we also have other figures who are involved as well. So they're all there. Closing with John the Baptist, who did get an opener. So you know. He sort of closes it, as it were. Eric.
I was just going to say that it's interesting that it seems like a roll call, first of all. And second of all, it's interesting that Judas gets a name check because, you know, thus far we saw him as the guy who betrays Jesus and sort of...
There's another Judas.
Oh, okay. There's more than one. Okay.
You haven't met him yet. But yes, it's confusing. There are a number of characters who have the same name, just to make your life really annoying later on. Aliki, were you waving with a separate intent?
No, I was just going to say there are two Judases.
You'd think they'd learnt after the first one. Other thoughts before we go into Passion Play number 2, the opening thereof. Helen.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I imagine that Judas considered the not Iscariot, the good Judas, considered himself the first one. No reason why he should be second.
Dan, did you wave?
That was just a Simon Zealots. Did you see I waved? That's all.
Oh, right.
Yep, sorry about that.
Don't make that kind of joke in the chat, otherwise I'll get very
I apologize,
confused.
yeah.
So those who've been with us since yesterday, of course, we've now got the span of this specific play. We've had it now. This is a play, a unit of action since yesterday, rather than an ongoing part of a much bigger sequence. So as an overall event, it has an interesting shape and structure to it that's quite pleasing, actually. It has its some bits that are undersold, but it's cramming a lot into a single play. And we can assume that it was performed as solely in a single year. Eric?
I was just going to say that it's also interesting that it ends with the sort of procession of saints, because it doesn't let you end on Mary's speech going and think on thy heavy mother, or whatever the line was, that heavy woman, sorry. Think on thy mother, that heavy woman, which is sort of kind of literally a downer, I guess.
You could sit on out of town previews, can't you? Going, is that the way to end it? Can we have something to lighten the mood a bit?
Yeah, it just seems like it would have been much more powerful to end it on that, though, compared to, having this full procession of people.
Okay. Any other thoughts before we go into what's listed as play 29? Okay, let's go into it. So we're entering the second Passion Play, and we'll find out some details about it in its probable connection with Passion Play number 1 in a moment. We're going to be getting into some heralding and some trialing, and for some people it's going to be quite a trial. So, what time that procession is entered into the place, and the Herods taken his scaffold, and Pilate and Annas and Caiaphas their scaffolds. Everybody gets a stage. Also, then there come there an expositor in doctor's weed, thus saying.
Sovereign and friends, ye must all be great with God. Grace, love, and charity ever be you among. The maiden's son preserve you, that for men died on road. He that is one God in persons three, defend you fro your fawn. By the leave and sufferance of Almighty God, we intending to proceed the matter that we left the last year, wherefore we beseech you that your wills be good, to keep the passion in your mind that shall be showed here. The last year we showed here how our Lord, for the love of men, came to the city of Jerusalem, meekly his death to take, and how he made his mundi, his body given then to his apostles, ever with us, to abiden for men's sake. In that mundi he was betrayed of Judas, that him sold to the Jews for 30 plates to deliver him that night, with swords and gloves to Jesu. They come with a traitor bold, and took him amongst his apostles about midnight. Now would we proceed, how he was brought then before Annas and Caiaphas, and sith before Pilate. And so forth in his passion, how meekly he took it for men, beseeching you, for maid of your souls, to take good heed thereat.
Here the Herod shall show himself and speak.
Now, cease of your talking, and giveth lordly audience. Not one word, I charge you that been here present, no one so hardy to presume in my high presence to unloose his lips against mine intent. I am Herod, of Jews king most reverent. The laws of Mahund my power shall fortify. Reverence to that Lord of grace, most excellent, for by his power all things doth multiply. If any Christian be so hardy his faith to deny, or once to err against his law on gibbets with chains, I shall hang him high, and with wild horse those traitors shall I draw. To kill 1,000 Christian I give not a haw, to see him hanging or brent to me is very pleasant. To drive him into dungeons, dragons to gnaw, and to rend their flesh and bones unto their sustenance. Johann the Baptist christened Christ, and so he did many one. Therefore myself did bring him oda. It is I that did him kill, I tell you, everyone. For and he had go forth, he should destroyed our law. Whereas Christian appeareth to me is great grievance, it paineth mine heart of those traitors to hear. For the laws of Mahund I have in governance, to which I will keep. That Lord hath no peer, for he is God most prudent. Now, I charge you, my lords, that been here, if any Christian dogs here doth appear, bring those traitors to my high power, and they shall have soon judgment.
My sovereign lord, highest of excellence, in you all judgment is terminable. All Christian dogs that do not hear diligence, ye put him to pains that be importable.
Nothing in you may be more commendable as to destroy those traitors that err against our laws. That be most profitable. By right wiseness, that law ye must proffer.
Now, my glorious Mahund, my sovereign saviour, these promises I make, as I am true knight. Thou that exceed his laws, by any error to the most shamefullest death, I shall him dite. But one thing is sore in my great delight, there is one Jesus of Nazareth, as men me telleth, of that man I desire to han a sight, with many great wonders. Our law he felleth. The Son of God himself he calleth, and King of Jews, he saith, is he, and many wonders of him befalleth. My heart desireth him for to see. Sirs, if that he come in this country with our jurisdiction, look ye espy, and anon that he be brought unto me, and the truth myself, then shall I try.
Tomorrow my journey I shall begin, to seek Jesus with my due diligence. If he come your province within, he shall not escape your high presence.
Mine sovereign, this my counsel that he shall take, a man that is both wise and strong, throughout all Galilee a surge to make, if Jesu be entered your people among. Correct his deeds that be do wrong, for his body is under your veil, as men talken him among, that he was born in Galilee.
Then of these matters, sirs, take heed, for a while I will be rest. Appetite requireth me so indeed, and physic telleth me it is the best.
And yes, we can assume that Herod goes and has a nap. Yeah, we're starting to stumble into sort of this awkward way this text is using language. Of course, they're talking about being king of Jews. Everybody's, apart from Pilate, in these texts will be Jewish, but it will also be used as a term of insult for someone who is other in some fashion. We also have talking about the laws of Mahound, so we're having an interesting crossover with terminology and things in the sense that, yeah, they're not that fussed about being wholly accurate about these kind of details. So, yeah, feel free to let rip on these or other points. Rachael.
I wonder if they're saying that Herod, Herod saying all these things about Muhammad is because at the time this, end town play is being written, if Jerusalem is a Muslim city at that time, and they're just conflating it with the biblical city as it once was. What I'm trying to say, throwing their political racism on top of an older, anti-Semitism that the Bible had. I don't know.
Yeah, it's an interesting mishmash. It's a way of othering, and a sort of the sense that there's a relatively loose idea probably at this point as to precisely what's actually going on with Islam. I don't know how much people genuinely knew or didn't know. And it's just become a very blanket term that people have just used, that anyone who's calling on some kind of false god is calling on that. It may be also that they think it's a name of a minor demon, rather than there's a possibility that actually depending on context that it actually has different meanings. Aliki.
And yet it's called a savior, which is interesting as well. Like, Christians can only apply Christian theological conceptions to other people's religions. And also, yeah, oh, wait a minute, I had something to say. Arg! No, I've forgotten it. Someone else.
I'm sure it will come back. And we've already had, in the Mary plays as well, a very odd conception of how a Jewish temple functions, because it's a weird mixture of Christian liturgy and their idea of what an early Jewish temple thing might be doing. Aliki, have you found it?
Herod is raging against Christians. There aren't any Christians yet. There's just Christ.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a very odd thing where all these time periods are being smashed together. These different ideas are being smashed together. Broadly speaking, to say that Herod's not a very nice person. He comes on and makes his boast. Alan.
I must admit that this struck me as being very, very similar to the sequence with Herod and the soldiers in the Massacre of the Innocents play, which we did a little while ago.
Yeah,
in the same cycle.
Yeah, even though they're a totally different Herod, a couple of generations later, he functions in a very similar way. He's not entirely the same. There is a slight character distinction between them, but only to a certain degree. Francis.
Yeah, one thing that struck me about that whole passage was that Herod is presented as sort of almost another kind of plot strand in all of this, because and he seems to be searching for Christ, completely separate from what Caiaphas and the Pharisees are doing, whereas I seem to recall from the Gospel that Christ was actually first of all taken, after he was arrested in Gethsemane, he was first taken to Herod, and then Herod passed him on to Pontius Pilate.
We will see if you're right.
But it's just the fact that Herod is actively going after Christ, whereas I believe in the Gospel he was. It was the Pharisees that brought Christ before Herod.
It's a bit more complicated than that. It's a jurisdictional issue, and it's more that Pilate goes, oh, well, it's not my pigeon. You've got to send him to Herod.
Right.
But I mean, Herod in this play definitely is very keen on finding out what magic tricks Jesus can do.
Yeah, that's in the Gospel. I remember that.
He's very curious about that. Aliki, then Helen, then Dan.
The bit of the political setup that tends to get obscured, and is obscured here, I think, unless you know exactly who everybody is that this is a city under occupation. So there are the Roman authorities, there's the allowed king Herod, there are the Pharisees who deal with the Roman authorities, there's quite a lot going on. It's also kind of, don't upset the Romans. Jesus, don't upset the Romans. Those guys are fierce.
Yeah, there is actually a very good argument for on the side of the actions of what the priest class is trying to do, which is, you know, there are people agitating for uprising and rebellion, and that's not necessarily very good for business, as they will discover in a few decades' time. Helen, you're muted at the moment.
Thank you. The first soldier says of Herod, in you all judgment is terminable, which is a legal, in a legal sense, that he has the power to hear and determine all cases, oie termine. And this means that it's part of the idea that Christ was crucified in fact by the Romans, which is an inconvenient fact. And this is part of putting it onto the Jews, which is a more preferable outcome for your average medieval Christian.
Dan.
Just to go back to Francis's point, I think I think you actually cleared it up already, Rob. It was basically to say that Pilate had sent him to Herod because Herod had, I think because Jesus is a Galilean, he would have been under Herod's jurisdiction. But then when Jesus said nothing to Herod, then he sent him back to Pilate there. So it was Pilate, Herod, then Pilate.
Yeah. We're going to get pretty much this narrative enacted, so we'll pause on that thought for a moment. I just briefly want to talk about the opener, Contemplatio. Just pointing out, this is where we left the story last year, and we can assume that last year was the play we've just done. It might not be. It might be a completely separate text, but they seem awfully similar, so we can probably assume that that a year has passed since the last play, in practical terms, and whether they alternated or they did another play the year after, or what was their performance schedule for these things is an interesting question. Rachael, then Eric.
When were these written again, and when were people running those crusades?
Well, in terms of writing them, it's almost impossible to really know. Sometime, in the nominal past. This manuscript is copied. I should have a precise date for that in front of me somewhere. Can I find it? Dan, might be able to tell
second
me.
half 15th century, first half 16th. So we really can't peg it down to. I mean, that's about 100-year gap. 100-year range rather.
Yeah, it's copied. Therefore, when it's copied, it may have been adjusted. It's also based on a number of different materials, so bits of it may have been written earlier than others, or adjusted earlier or later than others. So we've got a good several 100-year span of when it might have been written, which makes life tricky in that sense. Eric, sorry.
I was just gonna mention, because we often talk about the staging and so on and so forth, and we were talking about the ear and so on. I was gonna mention the scaffolds, because we saw this in Castle of Perseverance as well, where they had this elaborate sort of setup, and I was just wondering whether because we did say the end town was basically anywhere town, it could be performed anywhere kind of thing, but then or it could be set anywhere. It just kind of I'm just thinking it's very precise in terms of stage directions about where things are performed and how and what goes on, compared to I don't know, it's not you have a stage where you're just playing to an audience. You wouldn't have scaffolds on a stage, or you could, but yeah.
Well, I think we've got to be careful. The term scaffold is basically for any kind of structure. It's a very vague term. In this context, it's probably meaning stages that have been built in some location. But in other contexts, it might mean that's where they built something for the audience to be placed. Or, it's basically any kind of, they call gallows scaffolds. They're basically any wooden frame structure thing that has been put up. So we've got to be. It's irritating. It's like pageants as well. Pageants are, we think of pageant wagons, but pageant itself is another one of those horribly slippery medieval terms that means various different things in different contexts. Dan.
Yeah, no, that's actually a point I was going to make about. Even these parts, the way that this play was constructed was from a number of what one may say were a bunch of pageants, in fact. And these stage directions are quite precise and quite deceptive at the same time, because it seems to be indicating that this was staged this way, but the way that it's really, really descriptive. At times it seems like it could have been just the scribe or whoever, wherever from whatever copy text the scribe copied it, that this was meant for the readers. In fact, so one can't say that this was how it was staged or how it should be staged. It could be, well, this is just how we think it could be staged.
Well, the only pushback on that is that only appears in these two plays, the two Passion plays. It doesn't appear anywhere else in that manuscript. So it's not like there's an overarching. There's definitely an editorial process in making sure that the bits all vaguely fit together, and some things are mashed and separated, as we'll find later on. Anyway, we're possibly getting too much into that. We need to move forward. We need to do more text, because otherwise we'll run out of time. However fun and exciting, there's so much of this stuff we can talk about. I don't wish to rain on people's parade. Just a note going forward. I've just double-checked the clash of Judeus 3. That does need to be Eric because it talks to Annas at times. So that's the way that will have to be. We'll figure out Judas in a moment as well. Otherwise, we return to the Annas and Caiaphas show. Here shall a messenger come into the place, running and crying, tidings, tidings. And so round about the place. Jesus of Nazareth is take, Jesus of Nazareth is take, he says, and forthwith hailing the princes, thus saying.
All hail, my lords, princes of priests, Sir Caiaphas and Sir Annas, lords of the law. Tidings I bring you, receive them in your breasts. Jesus of Nazareth is take, therefore ye may be fa. He shall be brought hither to you anon. I tell you truly, with a great rout when he was take, I was him among, and there I was near to catch the clout. Malchus bare a lantern and put him in press. Anon he had a touch, and off went his ear. Jesus had his disciple put up his sword and cease, and set Malchus' ear again as whole as it e'er were. So I mote thee, methink it was a strange sight. When we came first to him, he came us again, and asked him whom he sought at that time of night. And we said, Jesus of Nazareth, we would have him fain. And he said, it is I that am here in your sight. And with a word, we overthrown backward every one, and some on their backs lying upright. But standing upon foot, manly, there was not one. Christ stood on his feet, as meek as a lamb, and we lain still like dead men till he bade us rise. When we were up, fast hands we laid upon him upon, and yet me thought I was not pleased with this new guise. Therefore taketh now your counsel, and advise you right well, and beeth right ware that he make you not a mat. For by my thrift I dare swear at this say, ye shall find him a strange wight.
Here they bring Jesus before Annas and Caiaphas, and one shouts saying thus.
Oh, lo, lords, here is the man that ye sent us for.
Therefore we cone you thank, than, and reward ye shall have the more. Jesus, thou art welcome hither to our presence. Full oftentimes we hand thee busily do sought. We paid to thy disciple for thee threaty pens. And as an ox or an horse, we truly thee begot. Therefore now art our, as thou standest us before. Say why thou hast robbed us, and say why thou hast troubled us and subverted our law. Say thou hast oft concluded us, and so thou hast do more. Wherefore it were full needful to bring thee a door.
What are thy disciples that follow thee about? And what is thy doctrine that thou dost preach? Tell me now somewhat, and bring us out of doubt, that we may to other men thy preaching forth teach.
All times that I have preached, open it was done, in the synagogue or in the temple, where that all Jews come. Ask him what I have said, and also what I have done. They con tell thee my words. Ask him every one.
What? Thou fellow, to whom speakest thou? Shalt thou so speak to a bishop? Thou shalt have on the cheek. I make a vow, and get thereto a knock.
And here he shall smite Jesus on the cheek.
If I have said amiss, thereof witness thou mayst bear. And if I have said but well in this, thou dost amiss to me to dear.
Sirs, taketh head now to his man, that he destroy not our law, and bring ye witness against him that ye can, so that he may be brought of door.
Sir, this I heard him with his own mouth saying, breaketh down this temple without delay, and I shall set it up again, as whole as it was by the third day.
Yes, sir, and I heard him saying also that he was the Son of God, and yet many a fool winneth so, thus laying thereon mine hod.
Yeah, and I heard him preach mech thing, and against our law every dell, of which it were long to make reckoning, to tellen all at this cell.
What sayest thou, Jesus? Why answereth not? Hearest now what is said against thee. Speak, man, speak. Thou fop, hast thou scorned to speak to me? Hearest not in how many things I thee accuse? Now I charge thee and conjure be the sun and the moon, that thou tell us and thou be God's son.
God's son I am. I say not nay to thee, and that ye all shall see at doomsday, when the sun shall come in great power and majesty, and deem the quick and dead as I thee say.
Out! Alas, what is this? Heareth ye not how he blasphemeth God? What needeth us to have more witness? Hear ye and heard all his own word. Think ye not he is worthy to die?
Yes! Yes, what
Yes.
all say, yes!
Yes.
Die! Die!
Ready to die!
Yes,
Yeah!
yes.
Taketh him to you and beateth him some dell for his blaspheming at this cell.
And here they shall beat Jesus about the head and the body, and spitten in his face, and pullen him down, and set him on a stool, and casten a cloth over his face. And the first shall say,
Fellows, beware what you do to this man, for prophecy well he can.
That shall be essayed by this bat.
and we can assume that between many of these lines they'll be hitting.
What thou, Jesus? Who gave thee that?
Or now will I wet now you can prophecy. Who is that?
Alan, step in, be number 4. I don't think I've given that out. I apologise.
And now will I a new game begin, that we mun play at, and all that am herein. Wheel and pull, come to all, whoso will. Who was that?
And here shall the women come to the Jews and say,
What, sirs, how take ye on with this man? See ye not one of his disciples, how he beholdeth you then?
Here shall the other woman say to Peter,
Ah, good man, meseemeth by thee that thou one of his disciples should be.
A woman? No, I say never this man sin that this world began.
and yes, it can't a bit Gallus.
But thou mayst not say nay, thou art one of his men. Be thy face well, we may thee keen.
Woman, thou sayest amiss of me. I know him not, so mote I thee.
A fella mine, well met, for my cousins, ere thou of Smet, when we thy master in the yard took, then all thy fellows him forsook, and now thou mayest not him forsake, for thou art of Galilee, I undertake.
Sir, I know him not by him that made me, and ye will me believe for an oath. I take record of all this company that I say to you is sooth.
And the cock crows again, and then Jesus shall look on Peter, and Peter shall weep, and then he shall go out saying,
Ah, well away, false heart, why wilt thou not breast? Sin thy master is so cowardly thou hast forsake. Alas, where shall I now on earth rest, till he of his mercy to grace will me take? I have forsake my master and my Lord Jesus 3 times, as he told me I should do the same, wherefore I may not have sorrow now. I, still sinful creature, I'm so much to blame. When I heard the cock crow and he cast me on a look, he cast on me a look, as who saith, bethink thee what I said before. Alas, the time that I ever him forsook, and so I will think from hence evermore.
And that ends the entirely artificial division of this into the end of play 29. A lot going on here, a lot that's going on quite lengthily, as we have this sort of game of hitting Jesus. They put him on a stool, they put a hood over his head, and then they beat him, and then ask which of them did it. So it's a sort of slightly demonic blind man's buff quality to it. It's very dark. It's incredible. We've got spitting as well before they put the hood on his face. So there's absolute humiliation being applied here. And this is not the first bit of torturing and assault that will occur. Yes, we have a sort of escalation going on, and then we have a separate scene which is within sight but not in quite the same space, with the denial by Peter there. A couple of women say, "Aren't you one of his disciples?" And he says, "No." And a cock crows, which I was distracted and didn't pick up on. I should know, because when the cock crows in the wrong place, it really ruins the show. Trust me, I had an unfortunate sound cue when the baby Jesus was born in a show that did quite a lot of stuff. Cock crowing when baby Jesus should cry. It was unfortunate. Anyway, thoughts from the room about this opening session to the Passion number 2. We've got a lot of stuff going on, different places still, travelling still. This messenger running all around. Rachael, I think.
No, like what I was trying to say before, I feel like this is, perhaps they've put some of this in modern dress, and that Herod before, going back and forth and talking about Muhammad is the conflation between, some of their modern politics at this time, perhaps to elicit a more powerful reaction out of the audience for this scene that we've just experienced, because it gives them a tangible enemy that they know in real life, or at least in their imagined life of the Ottoman Empire, their contemporaries or something like that, to really put them on the side of this man who's getting, beaten and tortured.
It's a really interesting question what the costuming in terms of period and the way they think about doing that would have been. We're getting some clues, and we got some clues yesterday about what the costumes mean in that way. I think it's a bit more. That's probably a more detailed discussion than we have time for now. But it's a good question about what time period for when they were doing it then, did they think in terms of signalling? Because a lot of it may be, for them, contemporary in that sense. But then that might be a consistent thing throughout the text. It might not be something that is separated between characters. Other thoughts? It's getting darker, so everyone's getting quieter.
Yeah.
I'll go to Elizabeth, then Aliki, then Eric.
Just a quick one, Rob. I really loved the second half of Peter's speech. I thought it was very moving, because we get that realization from him, from what he's done.
Yeah, and it's the realization because Jesus looked at him as well. There's something like there's the moment there that's a real connection. It's not just he heard a sound of a cock crowing. The cock crowing, and there's a moment, I told you this was going to happen earlier, and that has a connection to it that I think is very effective. Aliki.
So thinking about kind of the courtroom drama aspect of it and how well it works, even though there's no suspense, and how upsetting it is, even though we all know what's coming.
The fact that it's a game.
Yeah, that's very accurate, isn't it? The joke, the bullying joke with the violence and the humiliation. Maybe that's part of it.
Wheel and pull, again, a line of dialogue that's suggesting action, that they're turning him around and then they run at him from a different direction and he doesn't know where the strikes are going to come. It's a particularly brutal form of torture in that sense, because it's the anticipation that gets you. Eric.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that like now they haven't had like the sort of anything to lighten the mood after Peter has done this speech, and also it's just kind of I don't know, it's just interesting sort of the realization. Yeah, I don't know. He goes, I don't know him, I don't know him, I don't know him, and then oh yeah, well shit.
But it's that sense as well that it's happening within viewing distance, but not necessarily quite in the same space as what's going on. It's you get the impression that Annas, etc., and Caiaphas have just walked away while the bully boys get on with it, and that they will then return, which is what's happening now, or that they've moved to a slightly different area. Though I could be projecting there. We need to move on, Eric. So hold on to that thought.
It was basically a question about the stage directions. So yeah.
I'll go on.
It was just like because it says that then he shall go out and say. But then does it mean like he steps out of the crowd, or does it mean that he kind of like just leaves?
It's more likely he stepped into the crowd. That he's left whichever playing area that is associated with where Jesus is being beaten. That he's been to one side of, or something like that. But again, slightly ambiguous, and of course, in modern staging, we can take it as a cue, but not necessarily an absolute instruction, because it's not quite detailed enough. It's detailed enough, but not enough. Anyway, we're going to go into what is labelled as play 30, and we're going to see where this takes us as Caiaphas calls for the messenger again.
Messenger. Messenger.
Here, Lord, here.
Messenger, to Pilate in haste thou shalt gone, and say him we command us in word and deed, and pray him that he be at the moot hall anon, for we had a great matter that he must needs speed. In haste now go thy way, and look thou tarry north.
It shall be do, my lord, by this day I am as whit as thought.
And here Pilate sitteth in his scaffold, and the messenger kneeleth to him, thus saying,
All hail, Sir Pilate, that seemly is to see, prince of all this Jewry and keeper of the law. My lord Bishop Caiaphas commanded him to thee, and prayed thee to be at the moot hall by the day daw.
Go thy way, pratty messenger, and command me also. I shall be there in haste, and so thou mayst say, by the hour of prime I shall come in him too. I tarry no longer, nor make no delay.
And here the messenger cometh again, and bringeth an answer, thus saying,
All hail, mine lords and bishops and princes of the law. Sir Pilate commandeth him to you, and bade me say to you, he will be at the moot hall in haste, soon after the day daw. He would ye should be there by prime, without longer delay.
Now well moot thou, fair my good page. Take thou this for thy message.
And here entereth Judas, who we will pass to Eric for the duration, because it's talking to Annas.
I, Judas, have sinned and treason have done, for I have betrayed his rightful blood. Here is your money again, all in sum, for sorrow and thought I am waxwood.
What is that to us? Advise thee now. Thou didst with us covenant make. Thou soldest him us as horse or cow. Therefore thine own deeds thou must take.
Now,
then Judas casteth down the money and goeth and hangeth himself.
Now, sirs, the night is past, the day is come. It were time this man had his judgment. And Pilate abideth in the moot hall alone, till we should this man present. Therefore, go we now forth with him in haste.
It shall be done, and that in short space.
Yeah, but look if he be bound right well and fast.
He is safe now. Go we right a good pass.
Here they lead Jesus about the place till they come to the hall.
Sir Pilate, taketh heed to this thing. Jesus we hand before thee brought, where Karoulla doth down bring, and meckle shame he hath us wrought.
From this city into the land of Galilee, he hath brought our laws near into confusion, with his crafts wrought by nigromancy, showeth to the people by false simulation.
Yet, another and worst of all, against Caesar our emperor that is so fray, King of the Jews he doth him call, so our emperor's power naught should be.
Sir Pilate, we cannot tell half the blame that Jesus in our country hath wrought. Therefore we charge thee in the emperor's name, that he to the death in haste be brought.
What sayest to these complaints, Jesu? These people hath thee sore accused, because thou bringest up laws new, that in our days were not used.
Of here accusing me rouse naught, so that they hurt not their souls, nay, none more. I have naught yet found that I have sought. For my Father's will, forth must I go.
Jesus, by this then I trow thou art a king, and the Son of God thou art also, Lord of earth and of all things. Tell me the troth, if it be so.
In heaven is known my Father's intent, and in this world I was born. By my Father I was hither sent, for to seek that was forlorn. All that me hearing and in me believing, and keeping their faith steadfastly, though they weren't dead, I shall them recurring, and shall them bring to bliss endlessly.
Lo, sirs, now ye an heard this man, how think ye? Think ye not all by your reason, but as he saith it may well be that, and that it should be by his Inchison, I find him in none obetion, of error nor treason, nay, of no manner guilt. The law will, in conclusion, without default, he should be spilt.
Sir Pilate, the law resteth in thee, and we know verily his great trespass. To the emperor this matter told shall be, if thou let Jesus thus from thee pass.
Sirs, then tell me one thing, what shall be his accusing?
Sir, we tell thee all together, for his evil works we brought him hither, and if he had not an evildoer be, we should not have brought him to thee.
Taketh him then after your saw, and deemeth him after your law.
It is not letful to us, ye sane, no manner man for to slain. The cause why we bring him to thee, that he should not our king be. Well, thou knowest, king we have none, but our emperor alone.
Jesu, thou art king of Jewry.
So thou sayest now to me.
Tell me then, where is thy kingham?
My kingham is not in this world. I tell thee at one word, if my kingham here had be, I should not have been delivered to thee.
Sirs, advise now as ye can. I can find no default in this man.
Sir, here is a great record, take head thereto, and knowing great mischief in this man, and not only in one day or two, it is many years sin he began. We can tell thee time, where and when, that many 1,000 turned hath he, as all these people record well can, from hence into the land of Galilee.
And there's an exclamation from the crowd of "Yah, yah, yah."
Sirs, of one thing then give me relation, if Jesus were outborn in the land of Galilee, for we han no power, nay, no jurisdiction, of no man of that country. Therefore the truth ye tell me, and another way I shall provide. If Jesus were born in that country, the judgment of Herod he must abide.
Sir, as I am known to the law truly sworn, to the truth I have no fear. In Galilee, I know that he was born. I can tell in what place and where. Against this no man may answer, for he was born in Bethlehem, Judah. And this ye know now all, and have done here, that it stand in the land of Galilee.
Well, sir, sin that I know that it is so. The truth of this I must needs see. I understand right now what is to do. The judgment of Jesu lieth not to me. Herod is king of that country, to judge that region in length and in breadth. The jurisdiction of Jesu now hand must he. Therefore Jesus in hast to him ye lead. In hall the hast that ye may speed. Lead him to the Herod anon present. And say I command me with word and deed, and Jesu to him that I have sent.
This errand in haste, sped shall be. In all the haste that we can do, we shall not tarry in no degree till Herod's presence we come to.
And they're going to take Jesus and lead him in great haste to the Herod. There's so much going on in this scene that I find fascinating. It's Caiaphas, the loaded words that Caiaphas and Annas are using because they prepped their argument to Pilate in advance. Just going, King we have none but our emperor alone. We're good members of the Roman Empire. Of course we are, Pilate. And then the way Pilate just picks up on, oh, Galilee. Galilee is. Oh, right. Okay. It's Herod's problem, isn't it? And you can almost hear Caiaphas going, "Oh, fuck," in the next speech, as he has to say, "Yes, it is in Galilee. Yes, it is." There's something really interesting about the way this whole sequence goes because nobody wants to do it. They want it to be somebody else's problem. And there's a lot of that going on. There's also an interesting question about how much elements of this may be overlapping with other business still to do with what's happening to Jesus in another space. Because, has he exited or is he still somewhere else in sight while these bits of business are going on? Rachael, I think.
It seems like they're threatening Pilate because it seems like he doesn't want to, do this or whatever. I feel like it also seems like he doesn't really know, or maybe he does know who he is, or maybe he doesn't, and it can be, I guess, a production's choice how well he knows or has heard about him. But I feel like if Pilate was an older man and he's seeing a young man being charged for this and he doesn't really think it's whatever, that there might be some pity, because if somebody really were to come into a police station and start saying things like, "Oh, I don't have any money in this world, but I have a lot of money in the next," then they would think that they're not all there and just feel kind of bad for them that they, are going away for something because they've made a fuss and pissed off people who are powerful.
Helen.
The problem that Annas and Caiaphas have, though, is that that Herod doesn't have the power of execution. He doesn't have the power to have Christ put to death. Consequently, they've got to get Pilate to take over the jurisdiction, which is why they're trying to make it a crime against the empire. The first doctor says, he's saying that the emperor doesn't have any jurisdiction. He's your problem.
And there's a ticking clock here as well. They need to get this done now. Because once we go into a religious day, you're not going to get the trial. It'll get put off for the weekend, and you're not going to start on proceedings again till Monday. So you want this done. So when everyone keeps saying haste, there's some of them really mean that. They're in a hurry. And there is an element of with Annas and Caiaphas of they're doing a lot of walking tonight. They're putting in a lot of shoe leather to make this happen. Okay, final unit of action for this session. So we're going to return to Herod, who we were introduced to earlier. It wasn't a mirage. It wasn't a random thing. It was setting up what's going to come next. Here they take Jesu and lead him in great haste to the Herod, and the Herod's scaffold shall unclose. So again, we get this idea that there might be curtains or something that are reveal what is behind, or something along those lines, showing Herod in estate, and all the Jews kneeling except for Annas and Caiaphas. They shall stand, etc.
Hail, Herod, most excellent king, we are commanded to thine presence. Pilate sendeth thee by us greeting, and chargeth us by our obedience.
That we should do our diligence to bring Jesus to Nazareth unto thee, and chargeth us to make no resistance, because he was born in this country.
We know he hath wrought great folly against the law showed present. Therefore, Pilate, send him unto thee, that thou shouldest give him judgment.
Now, by my hound, my God of grace of Pilate, this is a deed full kenned. I forgive him now his great trespass, and shall be his friend without an end. Jesus, to me that he will send, I desired full sore him for to see. Great ease in this shall Pilate find. And Jesus, thou art welcome to me. My sovereign lord, this is the case. The great falseness of Jesu is openly known. There was never man did so great trespass, for he hath almost destroyed our law.
Yeah, by false craft of sorcery, wrought openly to the people all, and by subtle points of necromancy, many thousands for our law befall.
Most excellent king, ye must take heed. He will destroy all this country, both old and young. If he 10 months more proceed, by his miracles and false preaching, he bringeth the people in great fawning, and saith daily among him all, that he is Lord, and of all the Jews king, and Son of God he doth him call.
Sirs, all these matters I have heard said, and much more than ye me tell. Altogether they shall be laid, and I will take thereon counsel. Jesus, thou art welcome to me. I can Pilate great thank for his sending. I have desired full long thee to see, and of thy miracles to have knowing. It is told me thou dost many a wonder thing, crooked to gone, and blind men to seen, and they that been dead gives him living, and makes lepers fair and whole to be. These are wonder works wrought of thee. By what way I would know the true sentence? Now, Jesus, I pray thee, let me see no miracle wrought in my presence. In hast thou? Do thy diligence, and peradventure I will show favor to thee, for now thou art in my presence. Thine life and death here lieth in me.
And here Jesus shall not speak no word to the Herod.
Jesus, why speakest not to thy king? What is the cause thou standest so still? Thou knowest I may deem all thing, thine life and death lieth at my will. What? Speak, Jesus. Tell me, why these people do thee so here accuse? Bear not, but tell me, how on hay canst thyself excuse?
Lo, sirs, this is of him a false subtlety. He will not speak, but when he lists, thus he deceiveth the people in each degree. He is full false, ye verily tryst.
What? Thou unhinged harlot! Unhanged harlot? Unhanged harlot! Why wilt thou not speak? Hast thou scorned to speak unto thy king, because thou dost our laws break? I trow thou art afeard of our talking.
Nay, he is not afeard, but of a false wile, because we should not him accuse, if that he answered you until he knoweth he cannot himself excuse.
What? Speak, I say. Thou fouling evil, mote thou fair, look up! That devil melt thy cheek. Sirs, beat his body with scourges bare, and essay to make him for to speak.
Oh, it shall be do withouten tarrying. Come on, thou traitor, evil mote thou thee. Wilt thou not speak unto our king? A new lesson we shall lear thee. And here they pull off Jesus' clothes and beat him with whips.
Jesus, thy bones we shall not break, but we shall make thee to skip. Thou hast lost thy tongue, thou mayst not speak, thou shalt assay now of this whip.
Sirs, take these whips in your hand, and spare not while they last, and beat this traitor that here doth stand. I trow that he will speak in haste.
And when they have beaten him till he is all bloody, then the Herod saith,
These, sirs, I command you by the name of the devil of hell. Jesus, thinkest this good game? Thou art strong to suffer shame. Thou hadst liever be beaten lame than thy defaults to tell. But I will not thy body all spill, nor put it here into more pain. Sirs, taketh Jesus at your own will, and lead him to Pilate home again. Greet him well, and tell him certain all my good friendship shall he have. I give him power of Jesus. Thus ye him saying, whether he will him damn or save.
Sir, at your request it shall be do. We shall lead Jesus at your demand, and deliver him Pilate unto, and tell him all as ye command.
and off they go to back to Pilate. And in the next play, which is effectively the continuation of this play, it literally is, we will have the second trial before Pilate, and other business of this Passion Play number 2. The scene with Herod. Speak. I just want one word, just one lovely word. Dance for me. And yeah, the whipping is with it's a dark scene. And he's already been beaten. He's now being whipped. It's I mean, the character of Herod is slightly different here. Or at least is elaborated further here. It's not Herod the Great. This is a much more dilettante Herod. You know, he's a client king. He's not an all-powerful king, which the earlier one was. And yeah, it's this thing of thank you. Oh, isn't Pilate's my best friend now? Yeah.
I said in the chat that this really reminds me of some gritty police procedurals, and that was very much enhanced in this scene. All of these questions of authority and jurisdiction, and forgive me, the one hand washing the other. It's really it can be played very modern.
Yeah, it's all about passing. You know, it's the paperwork is in places here, isn't it? It's the which jurisdiction are we in? Whose responsibility? And you know, we got the first and second doctors. You know, these are learned men. They're doing the paperwork. It's actually Annas and Caiaphas sort of come in later. They send in their lawyers to lead the way there, actually. And they've got a renter crowd following up behind as well. So they are tiered in quite a specific way as to put pressure. It's quite canny in that way. Lynn, then Rachael.
Yeah, and all this procedure and red tape and bureaucracy just make it really excruciating, doesn't it? That we're just delaying the inevitable. And so, you know, the physical violence, and we know he's going to die an agonizing death. This must have been very hard to watch.
Yeah, and it's not distanced in the way one sort of expects with some passion plays where you're standing and you're shouting on a thing, and someone does a speech, and then someone does a speech. This is doing a very different job of work. Rachael.
Yeah, I mean, it was just about that it's the bureaucracy that you could really play these, I don't know, like Pilate as not really giving any shit about this guy at all. And he could be just like a kid that gets lost in the system or eaten up by it, and the corruption, it questions the system that they have, or that they had at this time, not at the time of the Bible, when this, I guess this scene, if it was historical, if it literally played out. And then for the people in the audience watching who weren't living in a very, I guess, uncorrupt system, or even now with all the abuses that happen, like in America with our system of justice.
Yeah, and it's there is a sense with Pilate of he's been interrupted. This was not how he thought his day was going to go. And yeah, how much does he care in that first interview? Is he just someone because they put forward a rubbish case. Annas basically just goes, well, he's done evil things. He's evil. Ta-da! It's not a very good argument, and the argument sort of comes in slightly late in that conversation. Whereas with Herod, at least, they send the doctors in first, so it's slightly different. Valentina, then Lynn, then Rachael again.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the first play that we read where it feels very much like it is a community building as an exercise. Is really, really educating the audience and kind of like putting them on one side and just keeping them there and we're going to go through together. But the other thing that struck me is like, in a setting like this, which seems to be very visual, what do you do with Judas hanging? Because the stage direction is there. There's no dialogue, but the stage direction is there, and it's kind of there for a reason.
Yeah, because the stage direction for Judas hanging himself comes amidst of that messenger business.
Yeah.
That people are moving and travelling. So there's plenty of time to organise it. The question is, what do you do with the body once he's up there? I've staging. I've done the odd hanging. It's easier in a theatre when you can, for example, arrange it so it happens at the interval, or that you can hide it. But these scaffolds do suggest that they may have some arrangement that they could hide things. So it might be that gets obscured and they can take him down. But it's a really good question because we get very little. Judas gets 4 lines there, and then we are told goes and hangs himself. So yeah, what's going on there? Rachael, then Eric.
Oh no, I was just gonna say that about this, this whole sequence, that it's very like the Pillow Man, that play, or like something by Franz Kafka, even like at the extreme end, just because it's like the brutality and then also what do you call it, the ambivalence of bureaucracy, and also that it's kind of like a little, just goes around.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's almost a slight dark comic potential to Annas and Caiaphas because they keep having to go over to somewhere else, and oh god, back to Pilate. Quality to that. Not for a second that we necessarily have sympathy for them, but in the sense that it's not an easy night for them. They're not getting tortured, but from their perspective, this was not. Nobody planned their day to go quite this way. And again, it's that ticking clock for those actors. There is that they've got that in their mind. They're running out of time before 24 hours in police custody, and then you have to spring him. Eric.
I was just going to say that it's interesting how, like when Valentina mentioned the hanging, it's very sort of offhand. It's like sort of, yeah, by the way, he just does this thing. It's just one line, literally. Also, it's just sort of the whole what's called. You get to see the escalation of violence from the original sort of, okay, he gets beaten up a bit, sort of, he gets smote on the cheek first, or smitten, depending on I don't know how you conjugate that verb. Anyway, verbs are weird, especially in English. But yeah, he gets like sort of, he starts off with like beating on the cheek, and then that, and then sort of being beaten up with the hood over his head, and then he gets moved, which would ultimately be painful. And then when he gets to the other end of it, he gets like whipped and beaten again, and then obviously, presumably, he's going to go back for the crucifixion, during which he's going to have to like carry a cross and all that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, and that point about escalation is important. Yes, we have this sort of token slap because he speaks out of turn, and then it talks about him being spat at and being hit before they put the hood on, and then the beating starts, and that's probably with sticks. It's incredibly violent, but it is controlled and structured in a way that, it really makes everyone feel uncomfortable in a controlled, dramatic fashion. We're into extra time. I'm not necessarily going to go around the room in a formal way, so if you have final thoughts, start waving at me. We've done a complete passion play, and we've started passion play number 2, so feel free to talk about them singularly or together, as it were, and see what comes out. I'll go to Briony.
This is like my first kind of input over these 2 days. This is my introduction to this kind of material, and I found it really, really, really interesting, as well as the discussion. But I've wanted to sit back and listen a bit more. But I really like it as a whole. What we've read, I like how dark and real it felt for the most part. It didn't feel like tropey, with this sort of a bit heavy bit, and then we've got a clown scene next, and then we've got it was a bit different, but there were still peaks and troughs with it. So yeah, very, very interesting. Can't wait to finish it.
Eric, I think I saw next.
Yeah, I was going to say that the whole sort of like these scenes are familiar. Like, I mean, even for us, surely for the audience who were watching this, presumably if it was performed at some point, which I guess it would have been, it just kind of like these are familiar scenes, but they're still incredibly like moving and really like you can connect with the characters quite. I mean, like it's very, for want of another word, visceral, like especially the beatings in the sort of it's not letting you it's not a cop out of sort of this is you know what happens in this story, we're not going to tell you the whole story kind of thing. It's not sort of reported message as in neoclassical tragedy and stuff. It's very sort of this is what happened, stare at it, deal with it.
Yeah, as Lynn was pointing out, it's the procedures and that makes it worse. Actually, the bureaucracy and the sense that things are going to get worse, that there isn't going to be a way out. That we know what the ending is. Spoilers. They are built into the way it's structured. And of course, it's important. Lynn said earlier as well that this is leading to the resurrection. So the horror is important because it's supposed to lead to joy again, and connects to the rituals that are part of daily life for the original audience. And the fact that it still works, even though many of us do not partake of those rituals, speaks to how well it is actually structured. Elizabeth, then Lynn.
Yeah, this is my first end town play, and I was looking at like the numbers of 28, 30, and I was thinking, oh my gosh, like it's been a really good, solid introduction to the end town plays. I found the tragic action in it really, really compelling. I have a sense that the narrative kind of speeds up as you get nearer towards the end, and you get like it gets more dynamic, gets more perilous. And because we know obviously what's going to happen, we are kind of kept in this position where there's nothing we can do. We just have to watch the action unfold. And I found that really powerful.
And yes, the story is not over yet. There's Passion Play 2 we will complete in the future. I'll see how soon that future is by the opinion of the room after we finish. Lynn.
Yeah, I have heard in sort of various places that in the early years after Jesus, whoever he was, preached and lived in the Roman Empire, that the cult that grew up around his memory was very much a cult of the disenfranchised and the downtrodden and the marginalized. It appealed to women and slaves and the poor. That the people on the edges of the Roman Empire were very attracted to this system because it advocated for them and it glorified the meek, and it was a story of humiliation ending in glory, and so that was it. It appealed to the least powerful and the most intensely suffering in the Roman Empire, of whom there were plenty. And then when it became a preferred religion with the conversion of Emperor Constantine, that was in danger of getting lost. And of course, by the year 1400 or 1500, the medieval church was extremely wealthy and its officers lived in great pomp. But on the ground, it hasn't lost. Christianity has not lost that appeal, that it is the faith of the downtrodden, the hope for the suffering, the people on the edges, the poor, the marginalized. It's their way of saying there's hope for you and God loves you, and look at how the messenger of God suffered, and that's an analogy for you. You can have that. So it hasn't lost its appeal to the most marginalized people in society.
Other thoughts about the wider issues of the play itself? Actually, anything. Hey, why not? Helen, dance around.
Yeah. One of the things that I was thinking of is just how far this has lasted. I mean, I imagine every one of us will have witnessed or been in a school nativity play. I mean, I'm from Yorkshire, so I've seen the York cycle frequently. But nevertheless, in practically every country which is at least nominally Christian, these little plays are put on. I mean, okay, I had a nephew and he was in one. He had a line. Unfortunately, he was also a reindeer. So it does get as strange now as it ever did, but it's part of a continuum, is this?
Yes. Other thoughts? Rachael?
Just how from yesterday, the beginning of yesterday to now, it just begins with, all the crowd of people kind of getting into this mob violence, that all of a sudden this just turns super violent. And then also, this is just something that somebody said, or that I read once, but that I guess the historical Jesus, like how to try and find him still in the Bible, is like if he's doing something that's rebellious or against the system, that's probably the real one, and then the one that's working miracles is probably the throwing in the mythology and building him into this, I don't know, more mainstream or more likable person to the status quo of how people live.
Yeah, the question of which sources that we are working from for any of these plays are really interesting because of the competing narratives to do with Christianity. We were talking about the early church just now. That's a series of competing narratives of which one won. Or at least for 1,000 odd years, in which case alternative narratives start schisming all over the place from various sources. And these plays are in part based on apocrypha and material that has accrued onto these stories as well. So we did in the End Town, we did the Mary plays early on, and the life of the Virgin Mary has expanded far beyond the gospel accounts because there is very, very little data there. So the question of which story we're telling here And this question of a continuum that Helen mentioned earlier is a really good one. Aliki, I think I saw you waving.
I'm really interested in something that Valentina said about the play as a community work and the way in which it would have fit into the schedule, or it could be fit into the schedule of worship around Holy Week and the intervals in which these things were performed, how long was each bit, and all of these things. I know we can't know, but really, really interested in it, because it seems to me that a church service, I don't think this is just me, can be a very alienating experience, especially if it's in a language you don't understand, and kind of all of this ritual that's encrusted around it. But the liturgicality, the ritual nature of this text cuts straight home, as well as the more realistic bits. It's really fascinating to me that it does that, especially for somebody like me who is philosophically inclined not to want to have anything to do with this story or be moved by it.
We've had considerable resistance with earlier parts of the End Town cycle. It's not a cycle, but this text, and especially when we hit bits which are extremely problematic, and this text is not unproblematic. It is informed by a basic conceit that Christianity wins the day over Judaism. And that will lead to much more problematic material further down the line. We already have this weird othering just with the word Jew in the text. That is actually relatively solvable in terms of performance, because you can adjust the text slightly so that doesn't become so pointed. But there are still problems with what you do with this and with all of these texts in terms of the context which you perform them in. Briony, I think I've got time for one last point.
Just agreeing and building on what Aliki was saying, I think what annoys me with some of these morality type plays is that it continues this feeling that I get from like child memories of church services, of this stuffiness and preachiness of Christianity. And I don't want that. It doesn't entertain me. And like I said with the play at the start of the week, if you're the playwright, if you're writing the story, then make your side of it the fun side. You have the power to do that. And this has done it. It's made it real. They used a little bit of the ritualism, but they used it effectively, and just to pull people into it. And it worked really well. And it just doesn't have that stuffy, religious, preachy, you have to be good because otherwise you'll go to hell, lazy narrative.
Yeah, I think the playwright's done a fabulous job in making this feel real, as well as delivering the information that they want to deliver. I think we will possibly return to this relatively soon, but sadly we must now stop. We have run out of time. All that remains is to thank all the wonderful readers for all their wonderful reading. Thank you very much, everyone, and goodbye.